Hello, and welcome back to This Month Above the Fold, a monthly series on the Commerce Collective podcast where Danny Hoffman, Senior Director of Global Retail Strategy, and I cover the most important happenings in commerce each and every month. I'm your host, Emma Irwin, and today we're talking about some major acquisitions like Kroger acquiring Giant Eagle and Uber's offer for Delivery Hero. Then we'll cover the tension between brands, TikTok, and AI-generated creator content. And finally, we will wrap up with Carrefour's health push in Belgium and how that could impact the greater grocery landscape. Let's get into it. Danny, how are you today? Have you slept at all in the last 48 hours?
I took a red eye this morning from Chicago. I actually slept quite well. I've gotten very good at sleep. It's like the perfect amount of time, except that there was a child behind me who really loved to kick my seat. But I'm running on some caffeine.
That is fair. I have nowhere near the same experience, but I accidentally drank 3 cups of coffee this morning. So I'm kind of like, okay, that was like 2 more than I should have.
Did you see that there was a new study that came out that said that drinking coffee has been linked with healthier hearts? I need to find this article.
I have not. That actually surprises me. I'm curious who did this research.
I'm going to send it to you, and then you can print it out and live by this thing. But up to 5 cups of coffee per day may potentially lower heart disease risk from the source, American Heart Association. I think this is promise. But I'm also just affirming my coffee habit.
All right, I guess we can talk about commerce. So story number 1 is we're essentially just covering a bunch of acquisitions. And we started off with specifically Kroger acquiring Giant Eagle and then Uber putting in the offer for Delivery Hero, I believe specifically in the EU. They kind of have to sell off the assets in the US. On paper, one of those is a grocery acquisition. One of those is a delivery acquisition. At the highest level, what do these signal to you? I see it as owning more of the consumer journey at the end of the day, but what do they signal to you?
You actually started with, I think, the point that I was going to hit, which is about antitrust and acquisition. Do you remember what Kroger tried to acquire?
Oh, something big.
Albertsons.
Was it Albertsons? I was going to say it was either Ahold or Albertsons.
So originally it was I think a $24 billion acquisition that didn't end up going through. And so here it is, Kroger acquiring Giant Eagle for $1.6 billion, much, much smaller. And instead of this big national footprint, it's Western Pennsylvania, my hometown, Pittsburgh, PA. Giant Eagle was my local grocer, so this one really hit home. And so I find this one particularly interesting from that lens because this feels like a way to sort of dip toe in. And it's also one of the first big moves. Kroger has a new CEO, Greg Foran, who came over from Walmart. This is his first big move, I think.
And do you think his strategy going forward will just be hey, maybe we can't acquire a giant one, but we're just going to keep acquiring these smaller and smaller ones to build ourselves up to be the size of, isn't Kroger the 3rd largest grocer in the US behind, or second?
Well, it was the 3rd largest grocer, and now it is the 2nd largest grocer. So this acquisition took it from what was in the 6-ish% to now 8.7% of U.S. grocery relative to Walmart has 20-something%, and Costco has 8.3% of U.S. grocery. So it was Walmart, Costco, Kroger, and now it's Walmart, Kroger, Costco. So this is a slight flip. And it's the drama of the Albertsons one was going to be, well, no, now Kroger becomes the largest grocer in the state, and they are not, but they are moving up. And so there's an earned scale there that comes from this acquisition that it's a toe dip into the Western Pennsylvania and Ohio marketplace. It is specifically for what was a family-owned grocery chain, I think since the 30s. But it also is increased scale. And so increased scale in the grocery space now earns a lot of stuff. There's buying leverage for products. There's a better private label, but scale is also customer data.
Can anyone bump Walmart out of that number 1 grocery spot, do you think?
Well, to our conversation last week where we were talking about what Amazon is doing, and it's all these roads are always eventually going to end up leading through Amazon. Amazon has tried to there's been a couple different paths that they've taken in terms of grocery. They bought Whole Foods. They tried Fresh. They then sunset Fresh. They tried the Just Walk Out tech stuff, and then sunset that too. And now Amazon is doing this like rapid delivery for grocery. And the grocery world is both, do I want to stand in a fluorescent lit big warehouse, or do I just want the stuff delivered to my home? And so I think a lot of grocers are both looking at like which one delivers the highest AOV, but also what Kroger is trying to do is the same thing as Walmart Connect, is the same thing as Amazon Ads. They want better consumer data that then ends up feeding the marketing funnel. Like I think that's also part of this play here. So the other part of this is like if you do the girl math on, well, I didn't spend $25 billion on Albertsons, but I did spend $1.5 billion on Giant Eagle. I now have whatever the change on that is, $23 billion left that I didn't spend. Wow, look at all this newfound money. What do I go do with it? And so I wonder if this is a test for Kroger into new market, but eventually an expansion of continued small itty bitty ones that don't necessarily catch the ire of antitrust, but do end up increasing in terms of scale and footprint.
Do you think that brands or like the manufacturers, our clients, brands that we work with and want to work with, of course, is this when these retailers keep acquiring smaller and smaller ones and get bigger and bigger, is that a good thing for brands, or is that more negative? Because I think of like, okay, you could like really increase your private label game if you wanted to, the bigger and bigger you go. But like, what do you think about that?
The kind of point to this being like positive for brands, net positive for brands, is that it makes it so that there's significantly more buying power from the retailer. So it means that they can start negotiating with you much harder for, well, no, I need the perfect terms. I need more profitability. But the trade-off on that is actually part of like a couple of years ago's big shift that Patrick and Katie put together, was about the retailers with the data are the ones that get the spend. And the more consumer data comes from the more consumers. So part of that is that what brands are looking for is almost two things. And there's this segregation that exists between those that control trade and actually sell into retailers, and those that control brand and marketing spend, and those that advertise via retailers. And the retailers want relationships with both. So the more customers you have, the more customer data you have, the better likelihood you are to provide some sort of deterministic solution that you can then build further up funnel advertising on top of. So this is beneficial to Kroger in a lot of different ways, I think, without it costing $24.6 billion.
Any hot takes on the Uber delivery hero side of things? Local, quick commerce, yeah. Tell me about that.
The Kroger Giant Eagle one is like the local to US, but also local to me in Pittsburgh. The Uber delivery hero is bigger. So that's a $14 billion acquisition, but also more importantly, Uber's business is a duality between mobility and delivery. So moving people and moving stuff. So the people business is one part. The delivery or grocery or stuff business is the other part. What they have reported is that Uber sees that somebody who engaged with both mobility and delivery is worth 3 times more than somebody who is worth one or the other. So their consumer value of somebody who engages with both in the same market is worth much, much more. So no brainer for them. They want to combine. By acquiring Delivery Hero, they can pretty much do that. So it gets Uber into 99 markets globally. And 58 of those markets now are both mobility and delivery markets, where previously it was 34. So they basically added an additional third of their business that now has that 3x consumer value, which is great. Like that makes a lot of sense for them. It also made a lot of sense for Delivery Hero because they basically got 130% share premium, and their CEO and founder was stepping down next year, and they were having a whole bunch of active pressures. Like this works for everyone, but the tie together between the two is both like broad reach for Uber, but also you touched it. There's a New York-based private equity firm called SSW that Delivery Hero is selling 14 of their markets to SSW, and that avoids 100% monopoly in some of the markets where it would have been just Uber and Delivery Hero. And so it keeps this out of some of the antitrust ire, especially the regulatory pressures from the EU. And that's important when you look at the broader media landscape and what happened to Paramount this past couple of weeks. So it's like both of these are fascinating strategies to do M&A without necessarily catching like the full push of all of the antitrust regulators.
I'm going to move us into story number 2, which is all about TikTok Shop and AI generated or even AI assisted creator slash affiliate content. We'll explain more. But essentially, eMarketer put out this piece on how AI reshapes the affiliate TikTok playbook. And essentially, TikTok is all for AI being used to help creators make more content. And large legacy brands are less convinced. In fact, they're like, no, not at all. Zero, nada, zero chance. And so as someone who helped work on our TikTok Shop playbook, I've got a lot of exposure to what's going on here. But on one hand, AI really helps creators move faster, test more hooks, produce more content, and TikTok's algorithm rewards scaling content. But brands do not want AI generated content. It's already such a hurdle to get over to sign up for the open affiliate program because you have to give up some sense of control. Add AI on top of it, and brands are like, no. Do you think brands are right to be worried about AI generated affiliate content, or is this an inevitable next evolution of creator commerce?
You talked to Darren about this,
I
so
did.
I'll ask you. What do you think? I think you're actually pretty close to this.
So my understanding of this, I think, let's start with me as a consumer. If I'm scrolling through TikTok and I see an affiliate video that has obviously been altered by AI, their eyes, their pupils are not looking right because they're using AI eye tracking, I'm scrolling away immediately. And if that's associated with a brand that I like, that kind of diminishes trust. That is a red card, Enzo level red card. I'm not interested anymore. But TikTok is all for this AI generated content. They are heavily pushing that. In fact, they opt in sellers to you have to opt out if you don't want affiliates to use AI for content generation. And obviously TikTok controls their own algorithm. That's what's going to help brands scale content and scale with the algorithm. That being said, no big brand is going to allow this, that they already have to give up so much control when they sign up for the open affiliate program. This is too far, and it really kind of leaves them risking their brand reputation when you kind of add in this layer of AI content. And at the end of the day, if we go back to what I started with, consumers value authenticity, and the brands are always going to roll with that authenticity. And so it'll just be interesting to see where TikTok goes with this. Do they kind of lean more in the direction of what the big brands are asking for, or do they continue to build that algorithm to favor the AI content? And maybe it's kind of just catered toward D2C and Chinese sellers.
Looking to confirm this thing, but there's another story on this about, did you see the REI Meta story?
The bike with the handlebars on the
handles,
back.
on either side, which
Yeah.
depends on how you ride your bike. I don't know. But that was an issue more of the internal controls within an advertising platform. But it was also AI creative and what it sometimes looks like when it doesn't work. But I think one of the things that you were hitting on is creative is thought of as a brand building play. So within some of the places in which you would use creative or AV, you think of those as oh, well, these are my streaming channels, or this is OLV. Those are some of the owning creative like that is actually a moat for most brands, because you have this beautiful, thoughtful, emotional, it evokes something from a consumer, and that then gets somebody to trust your brand or product. And I'm a commerce guy. I think of that as being oh, well, great. You can invest that SG&A. It creates a premium positioning for your brand that then earns you additional pricing and margin power on the shelf. Sometimes be no. It's my brand. It's what people think and feel. And I'm those two things are the same thing, regardless. What this is doing is potentially moving that moat and making it much smaller. So if everyone has access to creative that evokes that same emotion without the cost of production, it means that brand building is so much easier. But I think what's fascinating here is that consumers today still very much see through it. And so it doesn't actually create that emotion. It creates the opposite emotion. It makes people be I don't want to go anywhere near that two-handle bicycle. There is something here that is about the fundamentals of brand building and the impact of creative. Omnicom calls it there's the method and the craft. And I really like that thought process of this being a craft, because I do think that there's human ingenuity and creativity that, at least today, does not get replaced by AI creative. And clearly you're seeing that in this place that is so creative driven. I think that the internal debate that brands have, and I think something that our TikTok shop team has done a very good job of convincing brands who are willing to go on that journey, is this is a game of control and how much control you're willing to cede to creators in order to get the broadest message of your brand out there without you dictating what that message is. That's, I think, terrifying for a lot of brands to say, I would like for, and there are controls built in so that you at least can say like, all right, now you can't say these things or do these things, which is that's the way in which we're partnering with TikTok Shop today. But there is, if you tailor every bit of your message, people see through it, especially in these social channels, versus if you give it to the people who are native to that channel, they know exactly what to do with your brand. And that's how you end up with, what was the purple monster from McDonald's? The Grimace shake.
Yeah.
And that was amazing brand virality that you can't script. And
Yeah.
it worked. I'm probably not going to buy that purple shake if I don't see that stuff. I think it's about brand control here too, and what individual brands are willing to tolerate in terms of relinquishing their brand for GMV.
Story number 3 comes from Carrefour Belgium, which is expanding its commitment to balanced nutrition through its Act for Food strategy. So the retailer is responding to recommendations from the Belgian Food Council for Prevention and is turning those ideas into actual changes, such as healthier alternatives in specific aisles, expanded Nutri-Score labeling in stores and online, fewer child-appealing design elements on unhealthy products, etc. And then they're also working with a broad set of suppliers such as Danone, Nestle, Barilla, and then a variation of European ones that I don't want to botch the names of. So all of it is to make balanced nutrition easier for consumers to find, and the retailer is really kind of taking control here and making this happen, which is really interesting to me. But to you, like, what stands out to you the most about Carrefour's approach, especially in the context of Belgium and broader Europe? We can pivot to what that means more globally next, but in Europe.
Europe is doing a lot of different regulations around what they think is healthy for kids and teens. There's been a lot of like phone and social media stuff too that I personally think is very positive, but I'm also addicted to my phone. But apparently so are a lot of people. I think that there's actually a global trend that's happening here. So you've seen it emerge in terms of, I think you mentioned Nestle. Nestle is a great one because like they diversified a lot of their business that was previously very heavily chocolate and then ended up going into like the vitamin space and the health space and the protein powder space. And now they have a portfolio that looks very different from what it looked like 2 decades ago. And you've seen several of these conglomerates do something similar because they're realizing that consumer sentiment is headed in this direction. There was an awesome piece, I think it was by the Wall Street Journal, about the emerging higher priced but much healthier protein packed mac and cheese relative to the Kraft mac and cheese that we grew up with. And now like you're watching Kraft is making strategic decisions to be able to navigate and get into a healthier product. This is a demand globally. And I think that this is a trend toward, this is not going to be like the hottest take ever. This is like, you're watching GLP-1s take over. People care about health and longevity, and that's the biggest growing new emerging consumer space. I think that's a fascinating space because there's so many additional knock-on effects that happen when people live longer and live healthier. And I mean, like even one of the small ones that I heard was like the cost of airlines might go down because if everyone is a little bit lighter, you need less fuel. But then there's also potential knock-on effects of like, what's the impact on the cost of insurance? And does that go down? But then if AI can identify early disease, does that prevent it? But also does that make it so that it's like, oh, I've got a propensity to potentially have a certain disease that might make my insurance go back up again. So there's a lot of longevity and health pieces here, but I think that this is Europe taking a massive step, or what could be a massive step in terms of regulating what consumers are putting in their bodies based on what goes on the shelf. Will that stand? I don't know. Will that ever stand in America? Probably not. We value freedom too much. So I'm really curious to see where this one goes in the future, but I think it's related to health and longevity.
For sure. And there's we did an episode a few months ago on our Retail Insights team, Future Retail Disruption Report. Haha, I nailed that all in one sentence when I was practicing. I could not get that out, but I got it that time. So that's what matters. Yes. And Doug from our Retail Insights team was talking about how like affordable wellness is one of these things that's going to disrupt retail because, I think consumers will always value value, but value now means way more than price. It also includes affordable wellness. And a lot of the wellness industry went like cuckoo cuckoo and very expensive. And so a lot of like CPGs in terms of diversification have figured out how to kind of bring affordable wellness into things. I just, it's one of those where it's like, oh, I don't really believe you until we actually have more regulation, at least over here on stateside, in terms of actually bringing more affordable wellness into products. And just because so much of that is unregulated. But yeah, all of these CPGs who I think we've seen in public news some of them are a little bit on the struggle bus. You see a lot of acquisitions and consolidations as well, trying to figure out what that next thing is for consumers, because it's not just price and it has to be more than that, which is a very long-winded way to say nothing other than everyone should go read the Future Retail Disruption Report because it talks more about that.
There's a lot of larger macroeconomic things that are at play here. As we're like talking about consumer LTV, the ultimate LTV is that if you increase the literal life of your consumer, they will buy more things. And I mean, that's how consumer buying power works, right? Like a lot of
Yeah.
marketers traditionally, like the thing that they teach you is how do you engage with the youngest possible demographic and teach them behaviors early on so that they become a purchaser of that brand or product for their life. And if that life is longer, then the potential consumer and the relationship with that consumer becomes longer too. And there was another piece recently that was older generations that previously used to downsize homes are actually now, I think it was like 46% of homes that are multi-bedroom homes are now being bought by people who are older than 65. And like that ends up meaning that people probably have more mobility and more ability to live longer and spend more the longer that they age. And that's only going to continue to happen more and more as people eat healthier and exhibit healthier behaviors, you would think on average. So like there's the math component, which is that people who live longer buy more stuff. And then there's, I think, also the potential knock-on effects of all of that. And it's whether or not this ties directly into healthcare through GLP-1 or medication, or if it's just kind of like an ancillary, people are just trying to live healthier in general. And that's the macro trend.
It's all fascinating. And then my only other thing to point out is I think Doug had mentioned there's also like a declining birth rate. So that is also something to consider that contributes to, well, we need these people to live longer if there aren't going to be as many people to start living longer.
Totally. Zooming back in on Carrefour and Europe for a moment too, I think there's another piece of this that is big overarching trend. People are living longer. They want to be healthier. This is healthier product. But there's a fascinating strategic play here. So like we're talking about aggregation and global takeovers and navigating antitrust in the first story. And Carrefour actually ended up decreasing the number of markets that it's in. And now it's also decreasing the selection that's on its shelf. So it's this targeted by market and targeted in terms of shelf space that is almost the exact opposite of this like take over the world mentality. So from a business perspective, I think that's also different and worth noting too. So it's both, hey, I want to be healthier, but also like fewer markets, specific product selection. I think this is a little bit of a branding and identity thing from them that I wonder if it takes on.
Bonus story is that the EU is imposing a €3 customs duty on low-value imports entering the region. This is currently a voluntary program, but it will become mandatory in November. This sounds a little bit familiar if you ask me. Tell me your thoughts.
Yeah, it feels like de minimis again.
Yes.
For those that don't remember the de minimis provision, it was like removing this loophole allowed for, as it previously it was allowing for like lower size parcel below a certain threshold to be able to enter into the US duty free. And it's essentially like creating a moat where you can't send product into a country that is too small of a parcel or package or price point. So like the way around this for Temu in the States, and it looks like the way around this for Shein and Temu in Europe is same exact thing, which is like, all right, well, let me just create manufacturing and fulfillment in country. But it feels like another version of that same thing and another emergence of the Chinese retailers making their way onto new shores and then how regulation tries to catch up and navigate it. I mean, this is literally just like it's a fee on cheap e-com parcels. But the de minimis thing was like, it was also, I think, a promise from the current U.S. administration that they were like, I'm going to knock this down. But part of that was, I think, to try to get U.S. manufacturing to pick up. But at the same time, what it ended up doing was it ended up meaning that there was now local distribution from some of these that are just making cheaper goods. There was another piece that NPR did earlier this week, and it was like a 15-minute piece. It was a podcast that was about how Walmart has historically gotten a lot of distribution from China, which makes a lot of sense. Like, if you're going to have the lowest prices, you also are going to probably get the lowest manufacturing cost, because that's how P&Ls work. And Walmart has always had like the most razor thin P&L possible. I'm reading Made in America, the Sam Walton autobiography.
Nice.
Now,
Yep.
I'm really enjoying it. I don't know if you've read.
I've only read little bits and
Um,
pieces of it.
It's a fascinating character. We should separately. I think that there is a sentiment specifically around Temu and Shein in terms of quality that I don't think extends to everyone who also imports from China. It's just about whether it's like small parcel or bulk. So this is the way to try to stop them, but I don't actually know if that's going to stop them as much as just like it's a different channel for cheaper made product to enter into a country. But that's tale as old as time.
And that wraps us up for this month's Commerce News. Thank you to Danny. As always, we will see you again to wrap up September, because we're taking the first ever show vacation at the end of next month. Thank you for listening and watching, and we will see you again next time with what you need to know in commerce.